And so, it begins. Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shivering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, no real plan to speak of, and some kind of internet radio show. This is Blue Plz. It begins, sort of, now, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, you can begin it now. Yes. Yes, indeed, folks. Welcome to Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. I have literally no idea whatsoever what I'm doing today. Isn't it wonderful? Up until about a couple of hours ago, I had zero content. This is becoming a common theme, I must admit. Oh dear, yes. Give us new content now, please. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? As it happens, however, there is no content. There is none. However, I have managed to dig some up nonetheless. I have plans. I've thrown together some stuff, and I'm going to see how it works. Probably won't, but there you go. So I'm going to come on the show today. So, I would like to dissect every possible method of entertainment within World of Warcraft and tell you why it's awful. I'll come up with that a little bit later on the show. Also, why do various MMOs fail versus WoW, at least in the experience that I've had actually playing other MMOs? I want to tell you why exactly I kept coming back to WoW and try and figure out all of that stuff, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. Then I'm going to do something a little bit crazy. I had an idea. And the idea is possibly a continuing series, which I should be able to pull off, hopefully, over the next few weeks or so. I'm going to try and do the first one today, if it works. Oh god, I hope it does. And my idea is, I'm going to try and leave WoW for another game. And I'm going to give that game 15 minutes to hook me in to the point where I will say I actually want to maybe continue with it. And if it doesn't do so in the first 15 minutes, I will abandon it and go on to another game. I want to do this on a weekly basis. And the game that I have chosen to do it with this week is Everquest 2, which is now sitting on my hard drive as we speak. So I'm going to play Everquest 2 for 15 minutes. I will stream the audio, I will stream the commentary, and we shall explore as to whether or not Everquest 2 is actually worth replacing WoW with. And I'll give it 15 minutes to convince me as whether or not it manages to pull that off. Yes, indeed. So we're going to do that. And, of course, your chance to contribute to the show. It's the illusion of choice. Yes, indeed. Send in your choices for the last topic of the show. That is the Murloc at cynicalbrit.com. The Murloc at cynicalbrit.com. That's the way to do it. Sounds like a good idea, I feel. Should do the job. Okay. Let's do some email, shall we? It's probably a good idea. I don't think there's anything else really to cover. It should be obvious that I've not played WoW this week. What I will discuss, actually, is the fact that people have been saying, oh, well, there's loads of content's been released this week. There's all these new talent trees. Yeah, for classes I don't play and don't give a damn about. And I suppose you might view that as, oh, that's arrogant, that's horrible, you should do this, and maybe you'd care if you played these other classes. Maybe I would, except I spent 5 years on my character, and I don't want to make another one, because if I do, that defeats the entire point of the exercise. why would I want to do that? I mean, think about it. My days played is something obscene, and I do mean something really, sadly obscene. So why would I want to roll another character? I cannot possibly imagine. As I say, I don't know anything about shaman and druids and all that nonsense, so I will not be discussing it. And if you want to go listen to another podcast that does know about rogues and shamans and druids and stuff like that, then by all means, you go do that. I'm going to talk about any class, it'll be mage, because that's the only one I know anything about. Anyway, ladies and gents, without further ado, it is time for this.
Mail time! That sounds like it's mail time! Here's the mail.
It never fails.
It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes,
I want to wail.
Yes, indeed, folks, it is mail time. That is the time where one reads the mail. It's odd, isn't it? It's funny. It's something that one might not expect. Yes, quite. Okay, let's have a look and see what we've got. Quite a few emails. So, here's one. I like this one. This one, Joseph Brewer, also known as Eviego, the 80k Druid tank from Storm Rage. And yes, that is an ICC. 80,000 HP. That is obscene. Good lord. Oh, host of shows!
You dare look upon the host of souls! I shall devour you all!
Yes, I have been driven to intense fits of rage as of late. Then you should become a warrior. The story is as such. We, as a guild, were pugging a holy pally for ICC 10. This pally says if we can do heroic modes, or I am not going. Sure, why not, we reply. Well, we get him in and clear the trash up to Marigar, and he says, Heroic Marigar? With a question mark. So we transfer him to Raid Lead and say, Said it, mate. And he says, Oh, I'm not Kingslayer. So I respond, Well, you douche, why are you requiring heroic modes when you're not even able to set it? So, does expecting people to set heroic mode for you fall into the category of entitled casuals wanting to be carried? Potentially, but I think, to be honest, this sounds like an issue of a lack of communication on both sides. And the first thing is that, surely, if the first thing I would ask of somebody, especially if I didn't have Kingslayer in my group at all, like, I knew that, say, you said you were pugging a Holy Paladin for ICC 10, so that would indicate that you already have a full raid of people that you are aware of, bar one Paladin. So it seems to me that you would want to, check whether or not you have a Kingslayer, and check whether this new guy who wants to do heroic has a Kingslayer. Because if none of you do, then that's really, really dumb. Now, it seems to me that if you agreed to his thing of, hey, there's going to have to be a heroic going on here, I've got to go to heroic modes, and I want to go to heroic modes, then surely you'd then say in reply, well, do you have the heroic achievement? Do you have what you need in order to enter it? Again, it seems like a communication problem between both sides of the guild. I don't think it's necessarily entitled to say to your guild, oh, well, someone else set it to heroic mode. At the end of the day, I think that the setting is stupid. It's an absolutely garbage setup, and as we saw in the whole thing about the Cataclysm raids and everything like that, is that they're going to be set up in such a way that you beat the boss a couple of times and then you get the heroic version, as opposed to you have to beat a boss which, say, about 2 or 3% of the raiding player base have beaten in order to beat a boss that is incredibly easy, i.e. heroic Marigar, heroic gunship, that kind of thing. To me, that's a response to that system and how incredibly stupid it is, and not wanting to do the same content over and over and over again. That seems like a reasonable response. Maybe he didn't approach it in the right way, but by the sounds of it, you guys didn't either. So it seems to me that overall, if someone is going to ask something like that, you should probably check before you go in there as to whether or not that's an issue. He said, oh, we have to do heroics, so I'm not coming. Well, you guys apparently didn't have the ability to do heroics. Maybe you've just not mentioned that in the email. Maybe you just didn't want to set it yourself and thought there was some kind of expectation from him. But you said, okay, let's do heroics. And to me, the implication there is that you have the ability to get into them in the first place. There you go. That would be my argument at any rate. Okay, here we go. Next one. This one is coming from Mitchell McLeod, which is an awesome name. And his name, oh god. He's on Dothramar Oceanic, and his name is Lolksaws. That's not so... If you've got a real name called, like, Mitchell McLeod, and you call your character Lolksaws, God, why would you do that? I cannot imagine. Also, apparently, he has a character called Pancakes and Food and Water. You are the worst. Anyway, good evening, host of shows. I've recently stopped playing WoW due to boredom and the fact that my guild isn't really willing to do ICC because we aren't dedicated towards raiding in specific. I just picked up on DDO and first-person shooters. However, this is one of the reasons I previously quit WoW 9 months ago, rejoined 3 months ago. Do you have any suggestion as to how to gain even the slightest glimmer of interest in WoW, as my friends and I have finished RAF completely, and I don't want a multi-box despite the fact of having 5 Shamis do a lightning bolt on the one target at the same time would be, well, be rather cool. Yes, so... interesting. No, there isn't... Isn't it sad? Isn't it sad that so many of us is like, oh, what can we do to revitalise our interest in WoW? Any other game, you wouldn't be desperately struggling to find a way to play it again. Now, of course, some of the not-so-intelligent forum goers would say, oh, it's addiction! Yeah, it's addiction, you're addicted! This is withdrawal symptoms. It's not. Here's what it really is. It's about time invested and expecting a return on said investment. What you're looking at is a situation where you've sunk a huge amount of time into the game, and as such you feel obliged to continue to play it, because otherwise you view that time as wasted. And indeed, of course, if your subscription is still running, then you definitely feel like you've got to play it, otherwise, meh. You know. So, the problem is, if you're forcing yourself to try and enjoy the game, then you're doing it wrong, because you've got to accept, perhaps, that you actually can't enjoy the game at this point in time. You can't do it. That's the problem I'm having. I've got maybe one shot at enjoying the game again, which is to go back and do Old War gear appropriate and go for the Herald of the Titans achievement with a guild. So, I could do that. However, I would be concerned as to how long that would keep me going, or whether or not I should be paying the $15 a month in order to do that. It's hard to justify, isn't it, when you think about it? I mean, you're talking about $15 a month. You can very easily buy a good game for $15 every month on Steam. I mean, for God's sake, what is it, about $20 at the moment? Or is it $25 to get the Fallout 3 Game of the Year edition with all the DLC? I mean, there's a lot more enjoyment to be had there. You can get a lot of games for just $15 a month will get you quite a few good games on Steam. So one has to wonder whether or not you can justify the expense. It's not about quantity time per se, it's also about quality time. If you're forcing yourself to, say, get into something that you don't really find enjoyable, but you just forcing yourself to continue to play the game, then I have to ask, honestly, is it worth it? Is that quality time? Because it doesn't seem to me like it is. That's not quality time, that's going through the rope. It's going through the motions more so than anything else. If those 4 hours aren't intensely fun, then why don't you play something else that is? That's a question that I have to ask you, and honestly, there is absolutely, completely no freaking way that you're going to force yourself to enjoy WoW again. Just think of it. Forcing yourself to enjoy WoW. Forcing yourself to enjoy anything is absurd. It's absolutely ridiculous. The idea is just beyond common sense. It's beyond even the realms of reality into some very, very weird stuff indeed. And it's like, you'd have to be some kind of masochist, honestly, to try and turn around the fact that you don't enjoy playing the game and then say, oh, well, I am enjoying playing the game. It's dumb. Unless you have a genuine reason and you are genuinely enthused to go back to the game for something, whether or not it be new raid content, new PvP content, the new expansion, something they've changed in the game that prevented you from enjoying it before, a group of friends with a specific idea in mind, then, honestly, you're going to have some real problems enjoying the game again, and I don't see why you should try it. It would be false. It would be a complete waste of your time. Go play something else. Just drop your subscription, let Blizzard know why, put the reason in the unsubscribe page, and then that's it. Off you go. No problem at all. That will be certainly my way of doing it. I don't know about anybody else, but hey. Right, do we have time for one last quick email before the break? I shall have a look. Oh god, that's huge. Here we go. Hey TB, what do you think of a disenchanting system through the trade window so BOP items could be converted for people without enchanting? It would of course require a warning box saying that items will be destroyed and unrecoverable, with a confirmation word that has to be timed such as disenchant, like when one tries to delete a tune or destroy an epic item. Yeah, no punctuation of that whatsoever. That's for Smoking Kills, 80 Troll Mage from Zero Charisma. I've been campaigning for this for 3 or 4 years. I came up with several mock-ups as for a system. I called it TB Trade. It went on the suggestions board several years running. It was never implemented, which is incredibly dumb. It is the way to completely eliminate scamming in one foul swoop from the game. It allows it allows a massive amount of convenience for enchanters. It makes the trade system all that much better. Hasn't been implemented in the game. Why? Because Blizzard doesn't want to. Why? I have no idea. Literally, I have absolutely no idea whatsoever. I assume that they are trying to keep their GMs in jobs, and would have to fire a few of them if we were able to eliminate trade scamming once and for all through a simple software setup. God. My name is TotalBiscuit. You're listening to Blue Plz here on cynicalbit.com. I'll play some music. I'll be right back after this. Talk a little bit about trying to find fun in WoW and where it just isn't giving me any at all. Yes, something like that. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com. You're listening to Blue Plz, or Bodge Please, whichever you prefer, on cynicalbrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. Okay, so let's talk about everything I hate. That sounds like a good idea. So, I've been trying to analyse in my head over the past couple of weeks as to if there was any possibility that in its current form I could actually enjoy playing WoW, and the answer that I've come to is an unequivocal no. So, I'm going to talk about the various aspects of WoW and why I don't enjoy them. Yes, it's a sad topic, but it's what I've come up with, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Right, okay. Well, there's a few ways that you can break down World of Warcraft, and the most obvious way is endgame and pre-endgame. So you've got content that involves you not being level 80, and content that involves you being level 80. Now, I can't actually remember how many level 80s there are. There's quite a few. There's a site called WoW Center, so I'm sure I can find that out fairly sharpish. It's interesting to have a look at, and then you can see, really, what players need to be catered to with what kind of content. Yeah, and right now, level 80s, there are 3.12 million. So, it's quite a few. It's more than any other level per se, and there's a couple of spikes in various other levels. Level 55 has a spike, for instance, and that will be because, well, Death Knights. Level 60 has a spike, the people that never bothered to go any higher than that. Level 70 as well. This is all of the characters that have been seen in the past 30 days. Yeah? So, these are actives. Now, you do have an awful lot of different levels here, but by far the most are level 80s, 3.12 million, and total characters seen in the last 30 days, 6 million. So, over half of those seen active in the past 30 days are level 80, therefore need to be catered to with endgame content. Now, what disturbs me more so than anything is the fact that they're really not. I mean, you are dealing with a situation where a lot of people are getting incredibly bored with the content, and even if they haven't actually finished it all, which is the case with the vast majority, they don't feel the need to continue, simply because Ice Crown has been around for how long now? Was that 7 months, maybe 8? And that's a lot of time to wait between instances, and all that's really on the horizon is Cataclysm and an undisclosed date, which we have to assume is sometime around November-ish. Or, you know, they did claim before BlizzCon, I don't see it happening. I mean, beta's not even out yet. Alpha, from all that I've heard, is in a very, very messy state indeed. And I don't believe that they're going to have it finished before November, nor would they really want to. And November's the big sales month. I don't believe Activision has anything else scheduled for that time, so it's really got to be the case of they bring it out then. So, in that case, what exactly has the endgame player got to look forward to? Well, not an awful lot. Now, there are some people that are continuing to hammer away at hard modes, and they're fine with that, but there are an awful lot more that have really got sick of the whole damn thing. I don't want to set foot in Icecrown again. I'm done with it. I did it for 6 months or so, didn't get as far as I wanted to go, and I would love to go into hard modes. I know that it's just the same bosses with bells and whistles on them. Some are vastly different in terms of the abilities that they've got, but they're still all based on the same mechanical formula. So what you're dealing with is a boss that is harder and is expanded, but is still the same boss, and it looks the same. The majority of its mechanics remain the same. I'm just trying to think back into hard modes as to which is the most different. I mean, you can think of, say, Firefighter is probably one of the biggest examples of mechanical changes. I mean, there's a huge additional set of abilities, but even with Firefighter, the fundamentals of the encounter remain exactly the same. All of the phases are the same. There are the same number of phases. He has the same abilities. He's just got additional ones that are mostly environmental. I mean, the reason it's called Firefighter primarily is because there's a crap ton of fire and an awful lot of fire. It's a hard encounter. It's a lot of fun as well. But yeah, it's still, in essence, the same fight. And the majority of the mechanics are still identical. Now, since that isn't available, and I don't really have the interest in going back to ICC, well, in terms of raiding, there's a couple of other things I could do. I mean, I can go back to the stuff that I was missing before, which is okay, as long as you downgrade your gear to something that's appropriate. I mean, we're fortunate that it didn't nerf that stuff too much, but you're still looking at a situation where you're prancing around item level 254 gear at a bare minimum that you've taken from ICC. If you're in 25-man mode, you're looking upwards of 269-ish. And then you are going to ruffle stomp it, and there's going to be no challenge to be had whatsoever. So, what do? Well, you downgrade your gear, and there's no easy way to do that. You've got to save up the badges to replace the stuff that you have no doubt disenchanted. I mean, why would you keep a hold of that stuff? You have limited bank slots, perhaps too limited, and you are expected to what? Keep a hold of item level 226 stuff? And for what reason? You hope never to have to go back to that stuff and to take a step backwards and go to something that by all rights should be done by now. So downgrading gear is a little bit of a problem. It's not impossible. If you're in a theme guild or if you're doing a sort of revisiting project, then that's fine. But that said, it's not an ideal scenario. It's not something you can easily go back to and say, right, well, I'm going to go do this today, and hey, look, all my gear is now level appropriate, because it isn't. So that's raiding out of the way. What else can you do? Well, the obvious content extension method is to roll up a new alt. The problem is that alt is going to have to be leveled. Now, leveling has not been changed all that much. It's been made a little quicker. And, of course, there is the ability to roll up with the Recruit a Friend program, which I've done once, although, I mean, even then I didn't get to level 60 without having a bunch of levels granted to me. I was about level 40, I think, and then we sunk 20 levels into getting my character to 60, and that was for the whole re-roll and do the old content thing, which lasted a few months, and then, of course, we just kind of got bored of it. So, in that case, why would one re-roll an alt? I mean, why would you do that? The problem with rolling an alt is that you're just going to eventually get back to the content that you were sick of in the first place. You're just going to be doing it with a slightly different character. Now, there are some classes, for instance, that are a complete change. I mean, if you play a mage and then you switch over to a healing druid, then you can expect the dynamic of every fight to change and the way that you have to deal with it to change as well. But at the end of the day, you are still in the same content. You are still in the same instances. So what about the level experience itself? I mean, is that something that you can personally enjoy? Well, for me, no, honestly. It's a problem I've had with an awful lot of games, and WoW is no exception. When WoW's quest system was first brought in, it certainly wasn't original, but it was better than everything else on the market at the time, which is why I think so many people actually reached the max level at the time, of course being level 60 in vanilla. That's the only reason I reached it. Even then, I mean, I quit 6 or 7 times. Think about it, 6 or 7 times before I hit level 60. Simply because, you know. And people say that leveling is easy and fast, but I beg to differ. You're talking about balancing something which is not fun at all versus something that is fun. So, what, you want me to sit around and level a character and go through quests that I've done before and grind mobs, none of which are remotely hard whatsoever, occasionally go into an instance that I've been into maybe 50 times before, so again, it's a repetition of the content, and I could be playing something else. That's the real problem. I could be playing something else. I would rather play League of Legends, or Fallout 3, or Napoleon Total War, or Red Dead Redemption, or Nier, or any of the other games that I'm currently playing right now. I would rather play those. I mean, for God's sake, I would rather play Global Agenda, which I only play in a maybe 30-minute burst, simply because the PvP does get somewhat repetitive, but I mean, the PvP is kind of like Team Fortress 2 in a way, and I can only really play that for about 30 minutes at a time as well, so it's a problem for me to justify the time of leveling. I mean, what is it? How many days does it now take to level? But let's bear in mind that you are not using Recruit a Friend. Someone could come up with it in the channel, no doubt. How long does it take to level? Assume a sort of average efficiency there. Because I'm going to bet that I cannot possibly justify it. I can't. I just can't do it. So what else is there to do? Well, there is PvP, which I've never really been into. PvP is a very dividing kind of format. I mean, so is raiding. It's one of the two major ways to really play the game, and PvP, to me, has never been all that interesting. I cannot, again, justify doing that either. I mean, Battlegrounds are okay in the sort of casual manner. It's like, hey, I'm playing Battlegrounds, blah, blah, blah. I could never do it on a regular basis, though. It's the sort of thing that you have to really be into in order to justify doing. I mean, what's the reward? The funny thing about PvP is that you're getting rewards for further PvP. It's not a means to an end for anything else other than for PvP. Now, if you're not interested in PvP to begin with, where is the end game to that? Now, I do understand that Blizzard does not want people to go into PvP for the sake of getting, say, PvE gear. There were massive complaints in TBC regarding that. But, for me, as a primarily PvE raider, what reason is there to go in there? Because I don't find PvP all that enjoyable. So I need a prod. I need some kind of motivation. I need a light at the end of the tunnel. And I need a carrot on a stick in order to get me to do that. Yet I don't have one. Because it's just PvP gear and stuff that is irrelevant. There's just no reason, absolutely no reason at all for me to do that. I mean, as regards to PvP itself, the reasons I don't find it all that enjoyable are that there are games which do it much, much better. They're not MMOs, necessarily, although there are MMOs with better PvP. I can think of several, one example being Global Agenda, the other being Guild Wars. They do PvP better. There are a couple of other games as well that do PvP very well. Warhammer Online is a prime example. The PvP in that game is more interesting. You feel like you're part of something in that because you can take territory. I'm sort of... I'd like to say I'm kind of disappointed that I never got to the stage where I was able to play that on a regular basis, but it's just come to my conclusion that I don't like PvPing in a game where almost everything is determined by stats. It's the reason I like Bloodline Champions, because Bloodline Champions is WoW arenas, but all of the stats and randomness are taken out. It's all about skill. Every single last bit of it. I love it. I think that's a great game. It's a beta that you should try and get into. That's what I would like to see out of WoW PvP, or indeed out of any other MMO's PvP. It's got to be skill-based in some way. And I'm talking about really skill-based, and no element of randomness, or at least a bare minimum element of randomness, no stats, and certainly not relying on equipment and all that kind of thing. But the problem is that that's against the very idea of MMOs. MMOs are about progression in terms of the gear that you get, and the levels that you have, and the stats that you've got. So, MMOs, in many respects, are a contradiction. Because if you want skill-based PvP, you can't do it in MMOs. You just can't. It's just the way that it's designed. It's going to be based on how powerful your character is and the gear that you're wearing, whether you like it or not. You've also got the fact that it doesn't really feel like you're actually engaged in the combat. Pressing hotkeys and everything is fine for raiding because, well, I don't suppose it really is it? It's not all that exciting. The pressing of hotkeys repeatedly is something that is awfully, awfully repetitive. There's no real doubt about that. When it comes to PvP, I find that even more obnoxious than I do in PvE, so there you go. Now, what else is there to do? Well, there's daily quests, but daily quests are, again, very repetitious. I could do crafting, but there's no point, because crafting is... There's no variety in crafting. Crafting is the vast majority of things everyone can make, and there are very few unique enchanting recipes of any description. I mean, I've got all of the ones that you can do bar one, I think. I don't have Life Worn, but I've got everything else that came in Wrath, and I've got most of the stuff from TBC. I don't have any of the old vanilla stuff, but that's dying out considering they want to hammer twinks into the ground for whatever reason. So... this is a nice follow-up, I suppose, to the question that I was given in the first section. What do you do to revitalise your interest in that? Well, if you didn't find something else that you found enjoyable to begin with, then forcing yourself to like something else, another element of the game, like, say, achievements, or crafting, or doing daily quests and things like that, if you never liked those to begin with, then what makes you think that you're going to do it now? You're not. It's as simple as that, and that's the problem. A lot of people like raiding, and there are over 3 million, yes indeed, 3 million level 80 characters that have been seen in the last 30 days, and I'm going to be honest here, I think those are the guys that should be being catered to, and the content should be coming thick and fast to keep those people from quitting. Because I already have. My name's TotalBiscuit, you listen to Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com. I'll be right back after this, folks. Enjoy.
You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com.
Friend, I've got what you need! A premium quality Ventrilo server from UGTservers.com! It's goblin engineering, you see. Not like those inferior gnome products, always backfiring. If you're short on cash, you can even share the cost of the server with Guild Deposit. Have those lazy guildies of yours pay their dues. You know, I could offer you this amazing electric cattle prod that'll really get them moving.
UGTservers.com. Voice communication for your guild. Get yours today.
Yes, indeed, folks. This is Blue Plz here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. Okay, so I've talked about the reasons that I cannot enjoy WoW anymore. Yes, indeed. It's sad that... No, it's not sad. Blizzard should have realised this. When people get a good thing, they want to keep having that good thing. It's as simple as that. It's not a complicated prospect to grasp. When I had my first taste of raiding... I said, this is cool, this is what I want to do. I want to do big co-op content with a lot of people. And lo and behold, that's exactly what I did. And I enjoyed it. I had a huge amount of fun with it. So, Blizzard continued to support that playstyle, and then eventually got it to a stage where that playstyle wasn't as fun anymore. And they relied on people wanting to keep playing the game for the sake of playing it, so they didn't provide enough content. There was an interesting quote put out fairly recently. Someone emailed this to me. I don't know where the hell it's gone. It was one of the Blues actually just saying, oh, well, there's... Let's see if I can find it anywhere. Yeah, yes. Here we go. Is this it? Yes, it is. Fantastic. I think it is, anyway. Or is it? Not sure. No, might not be. Oh, well, never mind. Well, the point was that it was pointing towards the fact that the 10 and 25 mans and the hard modes and everything seem to have restricted the amount of content that came out in Wrath. And I do have to wonder whether or not that's actually the case, but there you go. It seems to me that they haven't done as good a job as they should have by a long, long shot to actually support the level 80 player and keep them playing. That's really the problem I've got. It's as simple as that. And they continue not to do that. They continue not to release enough content and rely on hard modes which don't count as real brand new content. It's good that they're there. And I've never stated that it's not a good idea to have them. The problem is that if they end up superseding what would have otherwise been new instance content, new boss content, then I've got a problem with it. Now, let's talk about some other things. This is a sort of tangent per se to the last one. I like to talk about other MMOs that I've played and why I haven't kept playing them. And that would be the obvious, the first thing that you should really think about when you're bored of WoW is, should I go play another MMO? Maybe, you should, but every time I've thought that, it's never really worked out. Let me talk about them for a moment. So, someone gets laser on the nose. I've been a few weeks, folks, thankfully. So, here's a few MMOs. What was the first MMO I played after WoW? Can I remember? Let's think. I think it was probably Warhammer. Yeah, I think Warhammer was the first one that I really tried after getting into World of Warcraft. I don't count PlanetSide, because, hey, it's PlanetSide. Fair. Okay, no problem. I was playing PlanetSide before I played WoW. In fact, that's where I came to WoW from. So, it's not that. Warhammer Online, I think, was probably the one that I got really psyched for. I mean, I'm a big Warhammer fan, so I liked the franchise. I had a background in the franchise more so than I had with World of Warcraft. I mean, I played Warcraft 2 and 3. I didn't play the Frozen Throne until much later, funnily enough. I never bothered to pick it up. I had Warcraft 3 on launch day. I played everything. I loved it. It was a absolutely fantastic experience. Completely great. Played a little bit of the multiplayer. I was never any good at it, but hey, there you go. But that's about as much background as I had in the Warcraft universe. For Warhammer, most of my background is 40k, but I knew enough about the Warhammer Fantasy universe. I have a few army books because I used to play it. I used to have a Dark Elf army. I read some of the fiction, and Warhammer's got a great fiction backing it up, an awful lot of it. So I thought, hey, Warhammer Online, yeah, that'll be good, and it's by the developers of Age of Camelot, which is supposedly a good game, so I've been told. And then I stopped playing at level 19, I believe. So why? Well, there was a couple of reasons. The first thing, I chose to be a Goblin Squig Herder, which was supposed to be a good class, but it ended up being actually the most nerfed class for the first few months. It was an underpowered class. That didn't really help matters. I felt like I wasn't able to kill anything, so that wasn't a good feeling. I probably should have re-rolled, but I wanted to stick with it. Second reason, leveling was too frickin' hard. And not hard per se. It was too frickin' long. I know. It was the length of the leveling that I had a problem with. It wasn't exactly the difficulty of it. You could level without a problem. It's just, it took so long. Another issue that I had with it was there was a great system called public questing, and yet there were not anywhere near enough quests to actually justify doing just public questing. I mean, I can think of in the level 1 to 19 range for the Goblin, I can think of maybe 3 or 4. That's problematic. Really, really problematic. Why would you keep such a great system and then barely ever use it? It's a good question, isn't it? I got bored. I quit it. I didn't get into the PvP all that much. I mean, one could argue that the public quest system wasn't all that great, and there were issues with it. And there really were. I mean, the fact that you... Actually, yeah, that was one of the other things that really infuriated me. The fact that you could contribute a whole bunch, but it was still only weighted rolls. You could end up with absolutely nothing. And some random dude that had done nothing whatsoever, however low a chance, could actually end up getting the bag with the best loot in it. That was horrendous. I never got to the stage where I could do the big castle sieges and things like that, and I probably should go back and try and push myself to that point, but I didn't feel like continuing at that level. I just didn't. And Squig Herders didn't seem to have any kind of utility. I spent a whole bunch of time getting to that level in the first place. But just bear in mind, leveling was ridiculous at the start of the game. They nerfed it later, but it took so very long. Now, as regards to the actual combat system, this is something that's happened with a lot of games. Star Trek Online has this issue on the ground combat. Laggy combat. Combat that doesn't feel responsive. I don't like combat that involves hotkeys, but I really don't like combat that involves hotkeys and then doesn't actually do what you tell it to do. You can say whatever you like about WoW combat, but my god, WoW combat is responsive. As in, you press the button, it happens. Even with, say, 200, 300 millisecond ping, it happens. You don't have situations whereby nothing, everything lags out. Take Star Trek Online, for example. My god, yeah, that lags out hard. In ground combat, that is ridiculous. You press a button, and it's like you just hammer the keys, and then you just hope that it actually does what you want it to do. And grenades, you see the arm movement throw, but the grenade doesn't appear till about 2 seconds later. And that completely disconnects you from the combat. You feel disconnected from your character. That's bizarre, isn't it? Really weird. I can't really figure that out at all. Okay, so that was war, and that was why I didn't play it. I think I would have gotten something out of it if I'd gotten to endgame and gotten into PvP, but fact is I didn't. And still you're dealing with the fact that WoW PvP and MMO PvP in general is pretty disconnected. It's not all that skill-based, and it is gear-based, and it's not as enjoyable as it should be. What else did I play? Lord of the Rings Online. Tried that out. The problem with Lord of the Rings Online is that World of Warcraft exists. Now, WoW has questing, as you're well aware, and so does Lotro. WoW has a hotkey-based combat system, and so does Lotro. WoW has healing, whereas Lord of the Rings has morale. I mean, the healers are basically musicians who try and get people to continue fighting through the pain and all that nonsense, which is a bit contrived, to say the least, but there you go. And technically in that you don't die, per se, you just retreat, which is, again, a very odd contrivance to keep you playing. The problem with Lotro is that WoW exists. Questing is effectively the same. There are a couple of things that differ. I mean, the combat system is identical, the crafting system's better, and then you have to deal with something called the Epic Quest, which is a set of sort of personalised quests that take you through the entire story. That's nice. But again, I am entering a mindset where I don't want to quest in a game unless the combat system is enjoyable enough. Maybe if I was really into the Middle-earth fiction, and I'd have to be really into the Middle-earth fiction, then I would like it. But then again, if I was really into the Middle-earth fiction, I would probably spurge out about the fact that there are technically casters in that game. Yes. Not good, not good, not good. Yes, it's anti-law, apparently. They came up with some kind of contrived reason as to why it was okay, but there you go. So yeah, that was my Lotro career. I got to level 9. as a warden, I believe, and that was it. Couldn't be bothered with it anymore. What else did I play? DDO. DDO is probably the game that I will go back to at some point. DDO, I didn't quit it because I stopped enjoying it. I quit it because with DDO you really need a group of friends to play with on a regular basis. I think as well at that point I was also going back into WoW raiding when I stopped playing it. You don't really have time to do both. I mean, DDO is a fairly time-consuming game, and since DDO is almost all instance-based, you do need a good team. A lot of fun that I had in DDO was doing all of the instances on Elite mode and stuff like that, and you get good loot that way, and it's very challenging, very hard. I found there were some cheap elements in the really hard difficulty modes. Something that Global Agenda has a problem with this as well, actually. That's got 4 sets of difficulty modes. Actually, it's got more than that. I believe for the PvE missions, there are about 6, maybe 7 modes of difficulty, which are unlocked at various levels. So, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that their way of doing the difficulty often involves some really cheap stuff. And I do mean cheap, like instant deaths and nonsense like that. And instant deaths is okay on, say, WoW and the raiding scene, that kind of thing, but only if you see it coming, and only if it's set up so that you can see it coming. If you don't, and if it's not, then that is a problem. A genuine, real, horrendous problem. Global Agenda has that problem. DDO, to some degree, has that problem. Otherwise, though, DDO is a strong game, a lot stronger than it used to be. It's a solid instance-based game. It's got all of the stuff like traps and all that kind of nonsense. It's got bosses, it's got a storyline, it's got the whole Dungeon Master system, whereby you get a set of narrations, actual audio narrations, that give you a little bit of story and really immerse you into it. That's probably the best game I've played out of MMOs, honestly. And it's got a lot of things that WoW doesn't have. It's got a lot more instances, but a lot of people do like the whole open world aspect of MMO gaming. Whereas, since all of the content is almost all of it anyway, is instanced, there is a genuine problem with that. What I will also say is that you are running into a situation where if you like PvP, that game is not for you. Since I don't like PvP, I'm cool with that. No problem whatsoever. But yeah, that's pretty solid. What else have I played? Well, I can think of one more before we go to the break. EVE Online. EVE Online is odd, to say the least. I feel that I have to invest a huge amount of time into EVE Online in order to get to the stage that I want to get to. I mean, talking about the kind of content and the kind of ships that I want to fly, it would take so very long. That, and it's also very reliant on who you're playing with. Regardless of what the trailer will say, no. As a first person, as one single guy, you cannot influence the universe. In fact, you'll just get blown up. There's a lot of opportunities whereby you will lose an awful lot of the things that you've spent building up. And I don't have all the time to invest in that. Funnily enough, that's the only other MMO I'm currently subscribed to. And I have a hack now, and I've got Tech 2 guns on it, and I'm thinking, hey, let's do PvP. And that might be enjoyable. It might be enjoyable. But it just took me so long to get there, and I felt like I was investing cash real cash in terms of subscription, to build up the skills that I wanted to do what I wanted to do. It's so hard these days to justify playing another MMO when I can get an awful lot of the experiences that I want out of gaming from single-player or normal multiplayer games. I won't have to spend ages building up a character. And I think that's maybe the reason why people come back to WoW. They don't want to spend loads of time building up to the stage they were in World of Warcraft. It's as simple as that. My name is TotalBiscuit, you're listening to Blue Plz here on SingleBit.com. When I come out after the break, I'm going to go and try to do a little bit of Everquest too. Give it the chance to impress me in 15 or so minutes. So I'll be right back after this, folks. Enjoy.
You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Plz. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I had to replace this section because we had a bunch of audio issues during the live broadcast, so I thought I'd re-record it, get rid of the old crap so that you can hear it in the way that it was intended to be. The point of this particular section was to have a little look at another game and attempt to leave WoW for this game. Give the game about 15 to 30 minutes to initially impress me and give me the idea I might want to stick around in it, and then there you go. Now, I'm going to start with Everquest 2, because this game came out a couple of weeks before WoW, and honestly didn't do all that well. I mean, it certainly wasn't a complete disaster, but it's not really regarded as all that competitive. So I've got the trial here, and I'm going to have a quick go of it and see what happens. I'm going to create a new character, and I shall go through step by step and tell you what exactly is available. So on the create character screen, we've got a bunch of different races, a lot more than WoW does right here, and they are divided into three types: good, neutral, and evil. Now, the one that I want to play is the Froglock, because it's a frog. Yes, it is indeed a frog. It's about the closest to a Murloc you're going to get. That's fair enough. A Froglock in what appears to be skin-tight chainmail greaves. That's kind of disturbing. Probably not the sort of thing I was looking to see at this time in the day. With regards to customization, it seems to be fairly reasonable. In terms of the Froglock, obviously there's not an awful lot you can customize. Head, eyes, eyebrow, lips, nose, skin pattern colour, size, etc, etc. Okay, so I shall make a large pink Froglock, because that makes sense. You can't really make them all that large. And apparently the Froglocks are a force for good in the world of Narath, as to why I really cannot imagine. One looks particularly bizarre. Now, you have two choices of where you want to start if you pick the Froglock. There's the city of Kelethin and New Halas, which is apparently a new starting area. So we're going to head over to New Halas. Now, I haven't downloaded all of this, and this actually streams kind of like Guild Wars does, so I'm going to go to the place where I actually can play, because I've streamed the content. Now, as regards to class choices, we've got a large number. I am told that race and class combinations do make a much bigger difference here, as in more traditional MMOs and RPGs than they do in WoW, where it's effectively cosmetic. Got a lot of different things available here: bards, clerics, druids, enchanters, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, shadow knight, shaman, sorcerer, summoner, and warrior. Now, unlike WoW, they are willing to go down the road of, yes, you can't pick all classes with one particular alignment, or indeed alliance or horde choice. In this case, got a bunch of things I can't do. The Bruiser, can't have that. I'd say evil monk. The Coercer, which is an enchanter, can't have that either. The Inquisitor, the Shadow Knight, which is a class of its own, the Assassin, and as well as the Brigand, who are both rogue classes. Also the Defiler and the Necromancer. Can't have those. But I can have a bunch of other stuff that I'd imagine the evil guys don't get to get. And in this case, it's asked me to go down the line of a warrior, so I'm going to pick a Berserker right here, which is a DPS style of warrior. And here we go. Select the name, as you might imagine, and drop onto what appears to be two servers available on the EU side: Runny Eye and Split Paw, both of which are fairly light in terms of the numbers on it. Yes, that name has already been taken. Yes, I keep forgetting that. That was actually my character. So, Total Halibut it is. There we go. I did create a character on Friday for the show, but there you go. And create a new one just so that I can give you a description and rundown of what's going on. So again, the point of this is to see whether or not the starting area actually grabs me. One of the big problems I've got with WoW right now, for instance, is that the leveling up is incredibly dull. Now, in this case, I'm presented with a starting area which appears to be a particularly frosty island, and a big Welcome to Everquest 2 message with a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, obviously there's this Legions of Narath card game, which is rather odd. I haven't tried that, I don't intend to, but it's rather interesting that it's in there to begin with. Also got a marketplace, and they start me off with some points. Bear in mind that this is a premium subscription game, but there is also a marketplace. If you are wondering how Blizzard got so greedy, well, you need only look at SOE, because they've been doing this for a lot longer than Blizzard has. Accepts and quests, and I am in front of some halfling kind of thing, which is looking down at me with a very disparaging look on its face. Not particularly pleasant. Then again, if she was forced to stand around here all day staring at what appears to be a bizarre pink frog, then I don't really blame her. Where am I ask? I'm on a big chunk of floating ice and rock, dubbed Pilgrim's Landing. The boat was besieged by the Snow Orcs. Snow Orcs? Really?
and destroyed while it was on its way to the New Halas dock. Yes, thank you for your help, blah blah blah. Okay, and we don't want to attack the orcs right now. She doesn't want to let me do it. So I've got to accept a quest to go speak to some other dude. So here we go. Have a look around here. Obviously, this is graphically limited because I don't have the high-resolution client, which apparently looks very nice indeed. You can hear the frog noises are rather odd. I wonder who they got to voice act this. There would appear to be some kind of giant enemy crabs right here that I'll attack. So let's have a look at the combat system. Now, I've got a ranged mode and I've got a melee mode. So I'll switch over to ranged right here, and that switches me to a bow, at which point I get attacked by this crab. And I do start to get battle music, which is kind of nice that they do bring in that incidental musical moment there. Now, as regards to the combat, bear in mind, this did come out at the same time as WoW, and the combat system appears to be nigh identical. It's laggy, which is something I do have a problem with. It doesn't feel quite as meaty as WoW, and that's kind of embarrassing considering. My ability to do a riposte and a couple of abilities that allow me to do things like add a bleeding dot there. Combat is also very, very slow indeed. This is, that said, a level 4 mob that I'm attacking right here. Funny thing is, the level 4 mob is doing barely anything to me. It's just taking me a long time to kill. Now, going against a level 4 mob as a level 1 in WoW would generally result in you dying horrendously. It would also not have that horrible clicking sound of this damn crab. Well, let's actually kill the crab. There we go. And it is dead. The beast has been slain. I'd say combat, fairly similar to World of Warcraft, especially with the melee class. Nothing particularly surprising. Now, what I do have is there's a piece of weathered timber on the ground. I can apparently activate this, so I'm going to do that right here. I can either chop it or examine it. So, apparently there is a forestation or deforestation skill. And it would be chopping at it, but just had an axe appear in my hand and didn't actually do anything. But there you go, I now have a piece of chopped wood. So evidently you start with a few gathering skills, which you do not do, of course, in World of Warcraft. There's also a creature den here, and apparently I can trap something with this. So I'm trapping what is inside here, and I'm going to trap a rawhide leather pelt. I wasn't aware that the rawhide leather pelt was a living creature. Apparently it is. Evidently it was scurrying around without a care in the world until I stole it. We'll now sell it. Chopping some more wood as well. Ah, there we go. The chopping animation is actually working this time. A fairly reasonable chopping animation. I'll give it that. That's a point in its favour. And let's go talk to this. Now, the real reason why I'm doing this is a new starting area, as far as I can tell. There was a splash screen for this new halal area or whatever. It's a second potential starting area. And I wanted to see what they could do with the starting area and whether after 5 or 6 years they have changed it to make it a little bit different. As it turns out, it doesn't look like they have right now. I've now leveled up for no apparent reason whatsoever, so evidently killing one crab and speaking to someone was enough to ding, so there you go. How are you busting rocks? Okay, go and beat up some elementals for the hell of it, and you get 13 copper for it. So I got a level, doesn't appear to be... Are there any talents in this game? I'm just looking at the inventory screen. Inventory screen is fairly generic, as you might imagine. Map screen is as well. Now, as regards to the UI, it's fair as far as I can tell. It's not bad, per se. It's got the same kind of bars and mini-map and your experience bar and a whole bunch of tips in the top right-hand corner. Again, it's something that you would expect. A bunch of skills here, which... This is something that's a little bit unusual. Look at the skill tree right here. It's not so much a skill tree, but a list. I have skills in avoidance and combat. Combat allows me to level up a bunch of different things. Aggression, I've got 5 out of 10 in aggression. This is how well your taunts will affect monsters. Crushing, which is how well I can use crushing weapons. Focus, how well I can maintain concentration and cast spells. Piercing, ranged, and slashing as well. And my avoidance is parry and defense. Now, parry and defense obviously is the same as you've got in WoW, but the idea that you can level up your taunts is interesting. Now, I assume that you do that simply via practice. Yes, indeed, I'm getting better at slashing, defense, parry right here. Let's use my taunt. There we go. I've got some points in aggression as well. So, all of this kind of thing is tied into a performance-based set of skills which level up as you go. Now, I've got to level 2, so apparently I've learned Berserker Rage. So, yes, my frog is looking very angry indeed, beating on this pile of rocks right here as the dramatic music goes on in the background. I'm not all that impressed, honestly. You can't try and pretend that these aren't rats. They're just rock-shaped rats, a big pile of rocks. So, in the meantime, while I auto-attack right here, it's funny that emotes are actually available as hotkeys. and there are 13 pages of them. There's also a set of macros as well. I'll look at else and see what's available there. Stats, fairly reasonable as well. Details, prefix and suffix titles available. Too interesting there. Inventory, recipes, quest journal, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, now, I'm looking at knowledge. Here's the abilities and combat arts. This is just my skills. Nothing that should really surprise anybody. Yes, I do start with mining and collecting and all that kind of thing, as well as a Hearthstone-style spell. Faction available? Yeah, we don't care about that either, so there you go. What it does have is a role-playing tag, which is interesting, something that the World of Warcraft would probably use, considering the issues role-players have had lately. Now, the real problem that I have with this is not so much that the combat system is dated, because WoW's is as well, but that they haven't really made any effort at all to differentiate themselves from World of Warcraft at the early game. Considering WoW has such a high ratio of people that actually leave in the early game, you'd think that they would do something about it. I'd like to take an example of Dungeons & Dragons Online. That game has a fantastic starting area. They completely redid it because they realized the initial one wasn't very good. And as a result, when they launched their free-to-play, they've done really well for themselves. In the case of this, if this is their redone starting area, then I'm not impressed. It's a bland and barren icy wasteland. The quests are incredibly dull, and it starts off with kill rats, and it continues with kill rats. I've done the quests after this, and that's all it is. Kill rats, farm rats, blah blah blah, and infinitum. It's not impressive. Now, I would think that any game that wants to try and compete with WoW and draw people away from WoW has got to provide a different experience. For me, because this doesn't, it's asking me to do another leveling set with a game that's very similar to World of Warcraft in order to get to an end game that may or may not be better. That is a really hard thing to stomach. It's not something that I would bother with. If I were to try something else, it would have to be something that's sufficiently different to World of Warcraft to justify me investing the time. And stuff like EVE, stuff like DDO, they all are sufficiently different to WoW to justify me as a veteran WoW player going to them. I understand that some people might argue that familiarity is important, but in this case I don't believe that that works out. It doesn't work for the game in general. This is not familiarity, this is banality. This is a really boring starting area that treats you like an idiot. And yet, a lot of the people coming to this game are going to be people that have already played WoW. I think every game in future has got to assume that their players have played World of Warcraft, so they cannot offer a really similar experience, because if they do, people will get so incredibly bored. Quite. Well, ladies and gents, that is about it for this. I will not be leaving World of Warcraft for this game because, again, the starting area, the combat systems, and everything are far, far too similar to WoW to justify it. In fact, I would say that the starting area appears to be worse. There are a number of fairly exciting starting areas now. The Draenei and the Blood Elves, they have really good starting areas. In Cataclysm, no doubt, the Goblins and the Worgen will have really great starting areas that will advance on everything that the game has learned. In this case, they appear to have presented me with something which is bland, dull, and quite frankly, uninviting. So, my attempt to leave World of Warcraft for Everquest 2 has successfully, well, failed. My name's been TotalBiscuit, and you have been listening to Blue Plz here on CynicalBrit.com with this re-recorded segment replacing the stuff that we lost on Friday. Again, very sorry for the delays with the site hacks and having to re-record all of this. It did take a little bit of time to get everything sorted out. I hope to see you next week on Blue Plz, or indeed that'll be this week, which is in a couple of days' time. That's Friday the 18th of June here on CynicalBrit.com. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you for listening, and good night. You have been listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz, WoW's #1 shock jock show, only on CynicalBrit.com. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment on the Cynical Brit website or write a review of the show on iTunes. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.